Okay, Rahul, you go. Just unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Rahul, unmute yourself.
I
Yeah,
didn't even, oh, you had muted me, that's why.
yeah.
All right, Ronnie Mama. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Hello, family. Um, and welcome to this FDG event today. Um, First of all, I'm incredibly excited to be asked to introduce the topic for today, uh, which is demographic shifts and bridging the gap between the young and the old. And I think it is incredibly timely and incredibly topical. Anecdotally, I think we all know that globally we're in the midst of a rapidly aging population, uh, created obviously through far better healthcare and greater life expectancy and a drop in actually birth rate. So it's actually the variables are very easily understood. Uh, some startling numbers as I was starting to research material to run this introduction. I was amazed that the forecast is that by 2050, every sixth person in the world is going to be more than 65 years of age. And what is even more interesting to me is that the number of people in the world older than 65 is going to be larger than the number of people below 5 years of age. So the replenishment rate of our population is actually going to be declining. Now, that obviously has some serious implications, uh, and perhaps might talk about some of those. Uh, I was extremely interested actually to see some of the research studies on this subject, and there was one which caught my eye, which was conducted by McKinsey and Company uh, on behalf of Barclays Investment Banking Group. And what they've started, recognizing all of these trends, what they've started to talk about is a differentiation between what they call a 20th century life cycle and a 21st century life cycle. So, what they're now saying is that, look, the 20th century life cycle followed the more conventional, orthodox kind of evolutionary pattern from 0 to 20 years. There was this childhood phase where kids tended to educate themselves, go through high school, go through undergrad, or whatever, and then get into this adulthood phase between the age of 20 to 65, and then get into a retirement age at 65 to 80. Now, this pattern is all too familiar for most of us on this group. Yeah. Now, what they're saying though is a completely different set of rules driven by improved life expectancy. So they're saying, all right, go educate yourself in your childhood phase 0 to 20. They expect to see a phase between the age of 20 and 30 where young adults go into a process of self-discovery. They experiment. They go on trips. They take gap years. They travel. They do risk-taking kind of entrepreneurial pursuits, etc., etc. Okay, and then they get into a career which goes from 55, and guess what? They actually terminate their careers at about 55 and then go into a process of self-rediscovery for the next 10 years. And then they embark on a second career, which could be anything. And when we listened to members of our family talk about how they have evolved in this phase of their lives, it's fascinating because nothing is out of bounds. There are all kinds of possibilities. But they basically talk about a second career which was spanned from 65 to 80, and 80 onwards is what was traditionally called retirement, when people are kind of happy to be comfortable with their golden years. Yeah. So it's a fascinating shift, a sea change in the way people are starting to approach their lives. Now, I'm especially pleased to be introducing this topic today because the reality is that what we're talking today a lot of it is based on experiences. There are plentiful learnings, but these are all experiential in nature. This stuff is not enshrined in textbooks. This stuff is not enshrined in academic curriculum yet. Okay, so it is fascinating to hear some of the stories from our own extensive family network. And I was absolutely fascinated to see the span of the profile in terms of age, where people have kind of experienced different facets and different stages of their lives as they've aged and how they've dealt with it. So look, without any further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Veena Mausi. She's going to be anchoring the discussion from here on in. So over to you, Veena Mausi.
Tell me what you want here. I don't understand.
Veena Mausi?
Rahul, can you introduce the panel, please, a little?
Oh, you want me to introduce the panel?
Yep.
All right. Okay, now hang on. Who is in the panel? So let's see. So on the panel, I'm going to start with Ranu Mama. Now, I don't have the introductions here, but anyhow, I'm going to talk about Ranu Mama, who I think all of us know, one of the most eclectic individuals in our family, a fearsome traveler, experimentationalist, experiments with cuisines, experiments with cultures, experiments with... Have you ever done skydiving, Ranu Mama? And you might have, I don't know. But basically nothing is off the books or out of bounds for him. So he completely pushes the bounds, reinventing, rediscovering himself, aside from, having transitioned from various elements in his professional career, starting with raising chickens, to oil in Nigeria, to infrastructure in India, to what have you. So that's Ranu Mama for you. Then we're going to be talking, Vishu Mama will be representing Divakar Mausaji, who has completely retooled. Actually, what he has done is he's brought his interests in spiritual learning, in writing, to life as he's grown older. And wonderful person to listen to, wonderful person in his interpretation, especially of the Bhagavad. So that's Divakar Mausaji for you. And then there's Beru Mausi, who continues. I don't think she surprises me, at least. My God, she's into, is this salsa Beru Mausi? But I certainly know bridge. So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening as she's kind of evolved from her personal interests, from her professional interests to her personal interests. Then there's Ajay Mama, who, having transitioned out of his professional consulting work, has devoted his life at this point in time to a whole bunch of social programs and providing social assistance in Ranikhet. And he's found a completely new purpose in his life, which is in terms of making an impact and making a difference to the needy people in the Ranikhet area. Okay. And then there's Veena Mausi, who has now started to kind of, she's got very, very active in her RWA, in her community, and she's in positions of leadership and seeking to make a difference in their lives. And then there's Dakshata. I'd said, Dakshata, I don't want any notes on you. I'm equipped to talk about you extensively, okay, but I don't have the time. So look, there is Dakshata, better represented by her better half in terms of his interests in photography and photojournalism. And she's an active partner in all of this stuff. And then there is, there's Gogi, who's going to be talking to us. And we all know Gogi is in a very, very different stage of her professional life. And perhaps she's the one person who'll eventually come to us with some harsh realities and hard facts in terms of what this all kind of means and how our environment is kind of tackling the challenges of these significant demographic shifts. So look, this is broadly the rundown to the whole thing. And now over to you, Veena Masi.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. And actually, thank you for introducing the topic in a way which makes it easier for me to go on. So I will, needless to say that you people have been listening to Ranu talking about me in terms of seniority of age in the family for coordinating this discussion. So it must have given already a clue to where we are heading in this discussion. And Rahul has already given a little explanation of that. However, I will have to repeat a little to follow the pattern of our discussion. So I will start by explaining what we mean by demographic shift and why we have taken this topic for discussion. Demographic shift can imply a change in population and its directions. It can mean change in the size or change in distribution of population, which can be based on age composition, employment on the basis of employment distribution, and social context based on religion, caste, gender, etc. Well, today, as already explained by Rahul, we will be focusing on population distribution on the basis of age, changes in it, and its implications. We will refer to the age distribution in two groups, below 60 years and 60 plus. So what is the picture like? We find that the world over, the size and population of the second group, that is 60 plus group, is increasing. We call it the aging population. Now, look at this slide. As shown in this slide, according to a study conducted by UN in 2015, the aging population in India constituted 13% of the total aging population of the world, or about 110 million people. We are focusing on our country just now. As per the same study, this segment, which constituted 8% of the total population of India in 2015, is expected to become 20% by 2050. In a spanning, it will increase by about 5% in 35 years. And this in spite of the fact that Indian population is considered young. A second aspect is increase in life expectancy. According to UN data, the average life expectancy in the world increased from 62 years in 1980 to 73 years in 2020. In India, it was 70 years in 2020. Now we go on to a graph which is very interesting. It is for Asia. You will notice it is in the form of pyramid, showing the age distribution in the form of pyramids. So this is to show the change in the age composition of population in Asia from 1950 to 2100 in a span of 50 years. The pyramid shows the upper portion, that is above the 60 plus age group. And over the years, the pyramid is getting broader at the top. The second pyramid is broader at the top, showing an increase in the share of population over 60 years in the total population. By 2100, the pyramid is bulkier at the top than at the bottom, implying that the 60 plus population will take over from the under 60 years population in terms of numbers. Rahul has already explained that every sixth person may be 60 plus. With the availability of better medical facilities and research, this is bound to increase further. A medical expert pointed out that every organ will be replaceable in future and 100 plus will be largely possible. In other words, a biological immortality. Makes me laugh almost. So what is the problem? Isn't it good news? Don't we all want to live longer? The problem is with how these years are spent. Old age brings with it economic dependence, increasing need for medical assistance, psychological problems like mental health and emotional disturbances caused by a feeling of isolation and futility of life without purposeful engagement. The first two issues of economic dependence and medical care have been the focus of attention by families and government in the form of provision of support systems. Recently, however, the concept of productive aging is gaining importance. This is what we are going to focus on. This concept looks upon older people as an asset and not as a burden. Not only income generating activities, but activities paid or unpaid, such as volunteering, caregiving, and activities which develop the capacity for work have been considered as productive forms of aging. These are seen as contributing to higher quality of life, life satisfaction, and health. We clearly have about 20 years of productive life ahead of us till the age of 80. By the way, I'm in my 80th year and I still feel productive. One often asks oneself, is the purpose just to live longer, or should one seek a more meaningful purpose? Why do some people know what they want and have a passion for life, while others languish in confusion? There are examples of those who refuse to bend before age and have achieved wonders. The 81 years old Samaritan Carlos Sofia has climbed 11 out of 14 highest peaks in the world since turning 60. And then we have Joe Biden, who at the age of 76 has taken on the challenge of being the president of the most important country under the most difficult circumstances. In Japan, they have the concept called ikigai, which means having a purpose in life, or the happiness of always being busy. What inspires people to stay alive till the very end? Stay active till the very end. What is the secret to a long and happy life? What is your reason for being? Ikigai. Some people have found their ikigai while others are still looking, though they carry it deep within. Finding it requires patience. According to those born on Okinawa Island in Japan, with the most centenarians in the world, their ikigai is the reason they get up in the morning. They live happy and healthy lives. This diagram in the slide shows how one can find one's ikigai or purpose in life. It can be based on what you love, which can become your passion and mission. What you are good at, which can be your profession and passion. What you can be paid for, which can be your vocation and profession. What the world needs, which can be your vocation and mission. There is in fact no word in Japanese which means retire in the sense of leaving the workforce. So, as Rahul mentioned, we have people in our family who have really developed their interests and achieved things which have led them to lead a very fruitful life and a very happy long life. So I would now move on to the second part of our discussion. There are many in our family who have found such a purpose and are leading fulfilling lives in their own way. So first I will ask Ranu to share the experiences of our two icons. Who else but Mamaji and Nirmal Mamiji, as well as that of Madhur. Ranu, please. Ranu. Ranu, are you there?
I am here, Veena Jiji. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Veena Jiji. And by the way, Veena Jiji is one of the most educated person in our family. Number of degrees she has, including a PhD, and she's done wonderful stuff. I'm going to talk about the people in my family, my parents, my wife. My sister is also here, and she will talk about it herself. But let me talk about, I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about these three people who have, in my view, have lived or are living a very purposeful life until they can or they could. My father was Brijbir Sarandas. He worked all of 69 years with a break of 1 year. He worked in government for 36 years, in the private sector for 25 years, and then 36 years in the private sector, of which 25 years was in his own company. He was a policeman, a diplomat, a civil servant, chief executive of a state, head of 2 PSUs, corporate executive, and entrepreneur. He was a spiritual guide, and he was an author and a thinker as well. I will start off with, after Allahabad University, MA in political science, he joined Burma Shell, which was a tragic experience because Burma Shell expected a certain dress code and he just could not afford those dresses, suits that was expected, and he found that a very artificial environment. So he resigned and went back to Kurwar. Babuji was actually not very thrilled that he came back, leaving a job. They all thought that he was kicked out, but he wasn't. He resigned. He then joined the police in 1948, which is the first batch of independent India. He was a policeman for 12 years in various places, Dehradun, Jaunpur, Meerut, and Lucknow. And then he was seconded into external affairs in 1960 and posted to Moscow. He briefly went to Hanoi, where he met Ho Chi Minh while he was gardening in his little hut outside his little hut. That was an interesting experience. He, in Moscow, the most memorable event was the Cuban Missile Crisis. So on the 31st of December 1963, there was a nuclear missile expected from the US to wipe out the Soviet Union and vice versa. I was, for some reason, sent back to India. I probably understand now why. And my parents decided to hold a party. And the last toast they drank was at 11:59, waiting to be obliterated in the next minute. Of course, it didn't happen, but that was a seminal event in his life in Moscow. Then 3 years in London, he was there in his routine work. The next step was very, very important. He opened a mission in Bhutan in 1968. Nobody had opened a mission in Bhutan, and the Indian mission was the first one. And the Bhutanese didn't really understand what a mission was, so they gave him a 3-room mud hut with 3 naked bulbs hanging inside the 3-room. And it became a very important mission with the Chinese on the border. And there were many incidents which the king asked my father to help with a Chinese threat at that time. The Bangladesh War happened in 1972, and Bhutan was one of the first countries, in fact, it was the first countries in the world to recognize Bangladesh, and which was followed by recognition by most other nations, for which he was awarded a Padma Shri. And this was entirely due to his relationship with the king that Bhutan actually recognized Bangladesh. He has been honored by Bhutan as one of the 5 people who created modern Bhutan alongside of Nehru. And there were only 5 people named by Bhutan. Then Sikkim, which was another very important event in his life, what the West and Chinese call annexation and we call merger, was actually a battle of 3 ladies, which was Indira Gandhi, Hope Cook, the Gyalmo, the wife of the Chogyal, and Kazini, who was the German wife of the popular leader. In this conflict, he landed there and, in a sense, deposed the ruler of the country and took over the reins of the country and became the chief executive, and Sikkim became a state of India. Airports Authority, after that, he got experience in project management, building airports. He acquired the land for Delhi Airport, and he then went to Libya in the desert and built an airport over there in a remote city in Libya, built an airport in Mauritius, and he then gained experience as project manager. And then as CMD Air India, he had a run-in with Sanjay Gandhi at that time. He was asked to do something that his conscience would not allow. And so at the age of 58, 2.5 years, in fact, before he was, at the age of 56, sorry, the retirement age was 58, he resigned from government. And this was a bleak period in his life. He had no home, he had no car, he had no bank balance, he had no reserves, he had no job. This is when this family comes together. And this is the amazing thing about the family. Kamla Buaji and Bhagat Sir and Poopaji opened up their house in Delhi for my parents. I was in Nigeria for my wife, my two children. We, in fact, learned how to walk in C12 at that point in time. And Benu also came across, I think, for a few months with her son. And all of them lived with Kamla Buaji. Poopaji gave his car to my father to move around. And this was something that was absolutely amazing. And this was the safety net that they had at that point in time in the lowest point of their lives. He then went into corporate life. He became the chairman of a private corporate group, a largest group. Well, that wasn't really his thing. He was there for 10 years. And that's when I think he gravitated towards Buddhism, which then both of them did, which then became an important part of their lives till the end. In 1991, I had already started a company called Fairwood in London, and we started a company in India called Fairwood, and he, along with Neelam, who was his private secretary in the corporate group, and Benu for a time, and Ruchi, who's a cousin of mine, and the amazing Vijay Bhaisa, started this company in India. There were only two desks in the corner of one hall in a small business center. This was really after the glamorous offices that he had all over the world. He was in one corner of a large hall in a small business center. And that's where this company started. This grew significantly over the years into becoming one of the top three project advisory companies in India. And he had experience of energy, of infrastructure, of aviation, of new cities, of tourism, of mobility, of medical and social development and technology and more. He was involved in, as the chairman in over 300 projects in 18 states of India and in over a dozen countries. This brought him huge satisfaction and finally some resources for the first time in his very distinguished life. He worked till a few days before he left us at the age of almost 92. This was his life. He was working throughout, 69 years, as I said, and he did just an amazing range of stuff that he loved to do. He was a thinker. He started various think tanks within the family and outside, and some are now very large. Let me move on because I don't have too much time. My mother, Nirmala Das. My mother was the most educated member of our family. She had 6 degrees and courses and an unfinished PhD, and she studied till the age of 46 with a 12-year break in between, which was when me and Benu were actually growing up. Her first job at the age of 46 was as a lecturer in Kamala Nehru College in Delhi. And then she worked in the private sector for 18 years, which was, till well into her 60s. She was a dancer, an accomplished dancer in her young life, won some awards, painter, a sculptor, an author, an interpreter, a conference specialist, one of the first in India, and a social worker. She had a MA in history. She studied sculpture and painting while she was in Moscow with my father. She studied Russian translation in London. In 1970, she wrote the first comprehensive history of Bhutan. She traveled all over Bhutan on horseback. And this was when she was 40 years old, to remote mountain monasteries, and did research and wrote this book. She started the first school nursery and kindergarten school in Bhutan, and the last Prime Minister of Bhutan was her student, as long as a lot of ministers and other prominent people who are now in important positions in Bhutan and in the world were her students. She had a double MA in international relations from JNU. She had an MPhil from in international relations in JNU. In 1976, at the age of 46, she started a doctorate, but that's when she got a job in Kamala Nehru College. In 1983, at the age of 53 to 55, she and Benu started a conference company, an international conference holding company. And in 86, at the age of 56, she joined a company and was in charge of the conferencing division of that company. And she actually, another company after that, and then she worked until 2001 when she was 61 years old. No, I'm sorry, 71 years old. 71 years old. She finally resigned from that company. She held solo exhibitions of her artwork. She kept her busy throughout her life. A great example of lifelong learning. She was never tired of learning and she tried different things in her life. She had so many friends and family. There were so many friends and family who actually lived with us throughout her life, from when she was 22 years old or 23 years old till the very end. Let me move on to my wife, Madhur Das. She's been with me for 50 years. First as a girlfriend for 2 years, a fiancée for 2 years, and a wife now for 46 years. She's a live wire human dynamo. She's the go-to person of our family and friends and even beyond. She's a problem solver. She's the default point of contact if there's any problem anywhere. She has been a teacher in Dehradun, Delhi, and Lagos. She was a newsletter editor, the president of Indian Women's Association in Nigeria, Doordarshan newscaster and anchor, national award-winning filmmaker, director and then ambassador of Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF. She was looking after corporate alliances and partnerships. There she worked for 10 years. And then she took 2 years off to rebuild a house, which we now stay in. It was in a bad shape, and she actually had the house built herself. Then she was invited at the age of 67, which was well beyond any UN norms, to work in the new office of UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, as a senior consultant, where she still works at the age of 70. She has more degrees than I do. 3 degrees, one of them midlife learning, BA, Bachelor of Education, and she did a full master's in mass communication at the age of 35. So this is not meant to be a biodata of these 3 people, my parents and my wife. It is meant to show how they all reinvented themselves at different stages of life, in different locations, learned new things constantly, were not afraid of the unknown, and remained busy and productive throughout. And they lived life king and queen size, in good times and bad, and made a difference. I have now worked for 49 years and will, God willing, do so for another 20. Lots of examples to follow. That's all. Veena Gigi, back to you.
Thank you, Ranu. I mean, I must say, wow, what icons, and Madhur, great also, still going. Ranu, best of luck. I will come back again. So now I'm going to bring in Divakar's experience. It is a unique example. Though an engineer by profession, he embarked on a spiritual journey in his later years and has been engaging and transferring his knowledge to others. Divakar could not be personally present, so his thought, Vishu will please share his thoughts about the whole experience of Divakar. Vishu, can you please take over? Vishu?
Veena Gigi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Vishu. Go ahead.
Well, our family reminds me of a banyan tree, which represents knowledge.
I remember the banyan tree used to be the logo of Allahabad University, where most of our Gen 1 have studied. And many of the Gen 2 also have studied there. The motto of Allahabad University used to be Quoth Rami Tot Arboris, meaning as many branches, as many trees. A banyan tree, which represents branches, has each branch can be considered to be a knowledge tree. And Diwakar Bhai Sahab is one such banyan tree under whose shade I have grown for 54 years. So it's a great honor for me to be talking on his behalf. I wish he could himself have spoken on it, but as you know, he has commitments for his own virtual session on Mahabharata today, and he can't join us. But nonetheless, I hope I'm able to do some justice to what he would have told you. Diwakar Bhai Sahab was never religious, but has always been a seeker. From early days, he was interested in diverse subjects ranging from Hindu philosophy, temple architecture, Nataraj, to quantum physics, astronomy, and even geology. He would spend a lot of time reading, researching, and writing on whatever topic interested him. Post-retirement, with a thinking mind and more time at his disposal, his curiosity turned to Mahabharata. He has probably read every book on Mahabharata. As he immersed deeper and deeper into Mahabharata, it began to reveal itself to him, not as a story that we are all familiar with, but as metaphors that were hidden in the story. Metaphors that needed to be decoded in order to understand and appreciate the power of truth, which is the quintessence of Mahabharata. He just kept diving deeper and deeper and deeper. At one stage, he was referring to 3 dictionaries, I'm told by Divya: English, Hindi, and Sanskrit. But more than his painstaking research, this book has been a revelation to him. Over 10 years, he decoded the characters, the places, and the different stories in the Mahabharata. His son Tanay encouraged him in putting it all together in a book and in getting the book published, which took a couple of years of consistent, persistent hard work, and finally, the end product, which is this. The cover of this book has been designed by none other than Purvi. The book was published in 2017. Proceeds of the book are all donated to the Satya Sai Hospital. Post-publishing, Bhai Sahab did not feel up to the effort required to promote and market his book, so it just languished for 3 years. When the COVID lockdown happened, a spiritual group in USA invited him to deliver a talk on his book. This was actually Bhai Sahab's first experience with Zoom. His talk was fascinating, even though his expertise with Zoom wasn't. His family, who attended that first talk, thought it would be great if Bhai Sahab could do more Zoom sessions on his book. He was reluctant as he wasn't comfortable with Zoom. So his daughter, Divya, took over the Zoom management so that he could just focus on his talk. He has since been sharing his knowledge every Sunday for the last 31 weeks. And as we speak, in a short time, this Sunday session is going to begin. Videos of the talks are posted on YouTube for those who miss a talk and for those who would like to archive them for future reference. Since there were so many questions that everyone had and also other points to share, Bhai Sahab started a WhatsApp group. The group freely discusses and debates the various aspects, not only Mahabharata, but Hindu philosophy and mythology. As Bhai Sahab says, Mahabharata is actually playing within each one of us all the time. All its characters, incidents, situations are within us. To conclude, I just want to say that the sessions on Mahabharata have been of immense interest and enriching for those who attend them. The participants include some relatives from the RSD group, Bhai Sahab's family friends, spanning all generations. From the RSD clan, the youngest to have attended his session is Amar's daughter Soumya, aged 12 years, from Gen 4. She was very sad at the plight of Draupadi and therefore would have no more of Mahabharata. So she abandoned the group after the first session. But we have some regulars who are Veena Jiji, Meera Jiji, Neetu Bhabi, Vinita Jiji, Kirti, Neelu, Ajay, and myself from Gen 2, and Puru, Seema, Shivi, Bunty, Divya, Tanay, Ruchi, Amar, and Purvi from Gen 3. The metaphors are explained beautifully by Diwakar Bhai Sahab and have invariably invoked interesting discussions and debates. It has helped in appreciating and enhancing understanding of ourselves. Mahabharata is an epic we all know very well, but the metaphors in the Mahabharata give it a whole new meaning. COVID and technology made it possible for Bhai Sahab to share his knowledge with a wider group. He continues with this research into the epic and other aspects of spirituality. Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Vishu, that was really interesting and a great example of how the two generations can, help each other. So that was really a very good example. Now I would request Benu, who we have been hearing so much of her love and passion for bridge and her achievements of reaching new heights at national and international level. To share with us, do come, Benu, and share with us your journey and what you have gained from it. Benu?
Yeah, hi. Gogi, can you unmute your mic, please?
Sure, Benu. I'm here only. I'll just...
Can we have the first slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it visible?
No?
Not yet, Gogi. Yep, okay now.
Okay.
Okay, great. So what do Kiran Nadar of HCL, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Omar Sharif, some illiterate sugarcane farmers from Bagpat, and I have in common? One, we are all over 60. And two, we all play bridge. Hi, today I would like to talk to you about passion, specifically about my passion for bridge. I first heard about the game when I was in my teens and I would come home for the holidays to discover that my parents would spend a lot of the evenings playing bridge. This upset me tremendously because I wanted them to spend time with me. I vowed that I would never learn this game, which I could not be a part of. However, during our posting to Burma, where it rained 10 months of the year, I picked up my first book on bridge and started playing to pass the endless hours indoors. Subsequently, life took over and I put the game behind me for 15 years. In that time, the game evolved tremendously. It was during our posting to Sri Lanka, where we had 5 gun points around the house and bodyguards for each one of us, that some of my friends kindly retaught me the game all over again. But it was only after Alok's retirement, when we shifted to Delhi, that I discovered competitive bridge, and I was hooked. Next slide, please. Who are bridge people? Some of us are scruffy and unkempt, occasionally smelly, but all extremely focused on the bridge table. Some are lonely, some widowed, some bored, some just curious. Some are financially stable, others have very little. Some have kids who have flown the nest, and some have no kids. There are over 200 million registered people who play bridge worldwide, ranging from the age of 8 to 100 years. More people play bridge around the world than chess. Bridge or whist started as a parlor game for the rich in the 16th century, a time pass, much like court piece or rummy. But over the years, it has evolved numerous times and is still evolving into a complex, competitive, absorbing game. In fact, a new form of bridge called abridged has recently attracted a lot of new members. And today, bridge is part of the Olympics, Commonwealth and Asian Games, as well as multiple international and national level tournaments worldwide. Next slide. Slide after that also. Okay. What inspires us to play bridge? A chance to interact with others, a common passion, sometimes to the point of addiction, a chance to use one's brain for constructive thinking. It gives us pleasure, happiness, also some pain and anger at times. But above all, it is an all-encompassing and absorbing sport. In fact, there has been a case where a woman shot her partner during a tournament in the US for playing badly. Next slide, please. Life is short, and for seniors, getting shorter by the hour. The ability to use one's brain and time to enhance not only one's skill and health, but any activity that gives us pleasure and happiness serves a very definitive purpose. In the words of one player, it is equivalent to a narcotic high. Next slide, please. Unlike poker, rummy, or teen patti, bridge requires all of one's faculties to be present on the table. One needs to use the power of one's mind to analyze the cards in your hand, communicate your hand to your partner successfully, and vice versa. One requires a strategy of how and which card to play to win successfully to make the contract that one has bid. This requires concentration and some math to count and assume what your opponents have and why they would play what they did when they did. Bridge can be linked to war games in a way. Who wins in the end? Next slide, please. There have been many studies globally on the health benefits of bridge. The two listed above are just a few. For seniors, the ability to put passion into anything that you do will provide not only health in body and mind, but joy, laughter, peace, and a meaning. Next slide, please. In bridge, as in life, there is a certain interdependency between seniors and the youth. Whilst we teach them the skill and the modalities of playing, they bring fresh ideas and changes to the game that is helping the game to constantly evolve. China, having recognized the mental and physical benefits of chess and bridge, has made this a compulsory subject in schools. The Indian bridge community has been trying for some time to do the same, but there needs to be a change in the Indian educational thinking about the long-term benefits of the mental games. There are pockets all over India where the senior members are teaching the youth. I am also a member of the Bridge Pathshala that is involved in the process. With this, I would like to end my presentation by saying to all of you, young and older young, look for something that gives you joy and meaning beyond your lives and homes. Develop and nurture that joy and passion for yourselves. Oh, and by the way, I made it to the Indian national women's team 4 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Benu. That was really great and very interesting. So these experiences have been at the level of individuals who have followed their interests and hobbies and passions. And there are many others similarly who have followed their interests, for example, in gardening, in writing, research, etc. I couldn't cover all of them in this session, but we know a lot about them. Now I will bring Ajay to share with us his experience at a different level. He has engaged himself in a very socially productive way in Ranikhet. We always wondered how Ajay and Mona would live out their lives there. We have heard Mona's experience with gardening. Ajay, please share yours also.
Good. Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
I'm good. So I have requested Gogi to give a screen sharing right to Suganya, my friend who's helping me out. And I will start my presentation with a short journey of what happened to begin with, and then what happened here, and then conclude thereafter. So, welcome to the land of Dev Bhumi, as in Uttarakhand. And I have a feeling that a lot of participants here have been to our place in Sukoon. And this is one of the slides that some of you would have seen in actuality, basically. So my presentation is divided into 3 sections. The first section talks about the unscheduled journey to an unknown territory. The second section relates to the initiatives that I undertook after having reached here. And the third section talks about the impacts. So let me begin with the first section as to my thought process when we started there. So we had no mission, we had no purpose, we did not know what next to do. We didn't even know why are we going actually, you know. There was a resistance from the family, there was a huge taunts from the friends that you are the one who was a party animal, so we will wait for you after 6 months, coming with your bag and baggage, and so on and so forth. So it was a tough call. And then with all these mixed thoughts, we were not confused, but 2 thoughts were there in my mind, that we need to lead our lives in a cleaner environment, closer to the nature, and in a purer environment. And one thing which was at the back of my mind since ages, that I have taken so much from the society, and it is time for me to sort of return to society in whichever manner I could. I must make a mention, because of the topic here, that my movement to this side was in and around 60 plus minus whatever it was. The reception in Ranikhet, the people were very nice. So we were received with open arms by unknown people from each strata of the society. And then we ventured into new places, new locations, met the locals. Local when I say, right at the grassroots level, and at other levels also. And therefore, we finally decided to shift into Sukoon in the year 2013, the month of June. I must say that one of the first visitors that we had was nobody other than Brijbir Mamaji. And it was his blessings that our journey became in 2013. And most of you know the story thereafter, that we are happily sorted out here. So this is the background that I wanted to mention, which most of you know in any case. The next section relates to my interventions. and which are on daily basis. Now, from all what I have heard so far, all these interventions are so trivial, and now I am wondering whether they were worth being shown or not. But nonetheless, so I start with a lot of excitement in the morning. My mornings on my walks it's full of excitement, because I don't know who will come to me for a bank loan, who will come to me for insurance, who will come to me for a court case or a land related issue or a family driven matter or a marriage issue, or could be anything. So on my from my return during the walks, I have 2 or 3 places where I sit down and I have my tea, and all these my community people, they know that I'll be found in one of those places, and they come with their problems, verbal or with documentation or whatever it was. And then I sort it out and I see, and then some of them I call home. Just to give you a little visual, you can see a cow and a gentleman along with the cow. All of you must be wondering, what is this happening? Let me tell you that he is nobody else other than my driver. So the first thing I did for him, which he wanted and he could never do himself, was to get loan for the cow from the local urban banks, basically. Thereafter, unfortunately, 6 months later, his cow died for one reason or the other, perhaps a snake bite or something. And then came another set of problems, the insurance, the veterinary surgeon, the postmortem, the ear tagging and all those things. So this is the photograph of my driver with the unfortunately dead cow. On the left-hand side, you will see an ear tag, which is a metal body. So in the process, while I helped him, it gave me a lot of understanding of all these processes and the animal husbandry and going to the veterinary surgeon, understanding and so on and so forth. On the right side, you'll find the State Bank of India board, where you'll see a whole lot of women and girls and children standing. These people have to actually walk 5 kilometers, 7 kilometers, 10 kilometers to come up to Machkali, where I stay, to this bank. Now, there is so much of crowd there, and there is not even a single facility for them to ease themselves. I fought with the administration, I raised funds, etc., etc., and we are on our way to construct a toilet for them, a washroom from them. Otherwise, these poor ladies or girls, they didn't know where to go and what to do, basically. The bank wouldn't allow them to enter inside for their washroom because of security reasons. Down below, the totally non-synergical thing that you see is the speed breaker. And again, you must be wondering, what is this about? So I took good 6 months to fight with NHAI, that is National Highway Authority of India. And they were giving me a typical story, with due apologies to all my relatives who've been in the bureaucracy, that no speed breakers can be installed in the highways. And then I fought it over. I said, safety is more important than the rule, basically. So it took me a couple of months, 6 months, from one office to the other office to get these things installed. So these are daily local interventions on day-to-day basis. So now I will take you to the major interventions, which are 3 and 4 so far. So this is Sarda Mutt in a place known as Kasar Devi. And this is the women wing of the Ramakrishna Mission, with which some of you are familiar. You will see a building, a pink color building. So when I came here, this was my first project because I was a student of Ramakrishna Mission, and both my parents were Dikshits from Belur Mutt, and I had a constant interaction, and so was my younger brother Ajit, who also had a constant interaction. So this was my first find. I was not generally allowed to be there, but one way or the other, I met these Matajis there, and they needed this vocational center for which I raised funds. I got it constructed. I got an architect who made my house, didn't charge any fee. A contractor, the supplier, all gave on cost basis. you'll see a little boy from the village who is dressed like a Vivekanand on the 12th of January when his birthday takes place. And these are the cultural activities, etc. The vocational center has knitting, has computers, has jams, jellies, candles. So there are about 100 children all the time in this vocational center. And that gave me a lot of satisfaction. The next intervention was totally in a different direction, which I could have never thought of. So this was a partnership. You know, there's an organization, FCN. FCN is Foundation for Contemplation of Nature. And I'm the principal advisor of this. It's an NGO. So we had a connect with this Western State University of Colorado, based out of Gunnison. And a researcher had come from there for about 4 months and stayed with us. And we had a lot of discussion, and he connected us to the university. And 6 months of dialogues took place. And then a course suggested by us was agreed by the university, and a bunch of 25 students who came, which can be seen in the lower slide, basically. More faculties came, deans came. The good thing out of this was that suddenly there was a spurt of activity in Machkhali because 25, 30 Firangis coming and going around freely with no threat, nothing of the kind. And all these boys and girls stayed with the village women. They ate the same food. They went in the fields in the morning. They went to the cow shed to milk. They went to the same loos and everything. And they were really enjoying. They had yoga classes, which you can see on the right-hand side. A lot of activities were organized. We took them to the schools. There were interaction amongst them. They learned our games like kabaddis and the khokos and kinds of things. And yoga sessions were everyday thing. There was trekking. There was academics also. And all of them got back their credits when they reached the university. This resulted into a lot of fresh activities, which is, I would perhaps understand that you people will understand something known as Samu. Samu is like a cooperative. So on the right side, the one photograph that you see, I am addressing all these village women in my own house, and some of you are familiar with Veranda, who have come to my house. And I explained them the advantages of a Samu and a cooperative as to how they could benefit. On the left-hand side, Professor Karen, who came from Colorado, she's sitting with the women, and she also explained them the same thing. And the upper photograph is courtyard chai meeting. So the students, the village pradhans and all these things. And on the right-hand side is an agriculture field, and the girl is trying to teach the young boy as to how to do the local farming. This Samu means that all these children who stayed, they paid money because it's a part of the fee. And these people created a bank account, and there was upscaling in the sense that they felt more confident, the women, the village women, and they were treasurers, and they were presidents, and they were secretaries, etc. And you know, in hills, most of you know, the men hardly work. So this was a great experience. And after that, one more batch came, and one more batch came, and some other organization who worked, they also took their help. As a result, as against 12 or 15 village women, now we have a Samu of about 30, 35. So there has been some bright spots in their life. This partnership resulted into creating another relationship, which is known as Sister City International. So the mayor of Gunnison invited me and another colleague of mine to participate in a Sister City International conference where 500 delegates from different people came. There we signed an MOU, and therefore you can see the Indian flag there. And I had various conferences with various people on fields. The middle picture is with the president and a couple of other pictures. Now this was on cultural exchange, this was on social exchanges of students, etc. So today we are on the world map. If you Google, you will get it. all these people who are attending conferences on the right-hand side, I'm with the mayor, who has become a very personal friend of mine also. And if COVID would not have happened on my personal invitation, he would have been here. Down below him are the two professors who stayed with me for about a month or so. And they came from there especially to sort of do some research in agriculture and social practices. And the reason for Ganesan and Machkali is that we are both mountain cities, basically. And we have the same problems, we have the same opportunities. Now, all this that I'm telling you, I must be honest and to say that there was some part of the life which I had never seen, and these things gave me an opportunity to see all these things, not the physical part of it, but these new avenues of a kind. So it was a very satisfying experience. Then we get to one of the major campaigns which is currently going on, which is a cleansing operation in 5 kilometers of Machkali. And you can see me either supervising or helping a worker or door-to-door collection, etc. Now, I am again a principal advisor here, and I have an enormous responsibility. So I've raised funds. I've been holding my meetings with the district administration, people, with the locals. We're trying to convince them with some street plays, with some flyers, and so on and so forth. So, Suganya, the next slide. So you can see this on the top, the district magistrate, me, and the NGO of Green Hills. Down below in my own lawn, the lady new SDM who's come. And right side, you can see all the trash and people, etc., etc. So extreme right, I'm discussing with the head of the Green Hills NGO and finding out ways and means. I fought it over because I told the government that, look here, after we collect, then what next do we do? And then we have been given a trenching ground. The last part is...
You, Ajay.
I'll just finish.
Yeah,
I'll just finish in 1 minute. And the last is B2R, where a lot of our people sitting here who have met this particular organization, where it's a BPO and 300 children are being trained. And the last section is the nature, as you can see. And this has given a lot of relief, comfort, solace, happiness to us. These are all real photographs. And thereafter, our health conditions have improved, our numbers have improved. And this being the last slide, there are 4 shots. And here we are, all of you are welcome. We'll be looking forward to seeing you in Sukoon. If it is not 0 kilometer, at least 1 kilometer, but it's close to that. So please do visit. And this is all my story for the last 8 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay, for a most wonderful experience and very, very impressive, really.
Thank you.
By the way, the audience, Ajay's got 11 guests staying with him right now, and he's given us time for this. So, though time is running short, but I'd like very, very briefly to share my own experience in my colony in a very modest way, social work. So though I've been an academician right through my life, I've always been interested in social work. I was engaging in consumer movement activities off and on, but immediately post-retirement, I got an opportunity when I got elected as secretary in the executive committee of the Vasant Vihar Cooperative Society. As such, I got an opportunity to become aware of the problems the colony was facing. Most important of which was the water problem. I realized that the water table was dangerously low and we were heavily dependent on tube wells. By studying the possible solutions, I realized that starting water harvesting at individual and community level was an immediate and dire necessity. Against very heavy odds and opposition from the committee, as well as the community. I mean, it's, I can't explain to you how difficult it is to convince the intelligentsia as compared to probably the lower strata of our society. So, however, 3 years later, within 3 years, I had started water harvesting in a major way. Because of this, today our colony is known for our intelligent handling of the water problem in maintaining our water table in spite of heavy withdrawals through tube wells. I was engaged passionately in this for almost 10 years and learned a lot. Basing myself on my long teaching experience to children of class 3 to graduate level, I have also been engaged in teaching underprivileged children subsequently and derived immense satisfaction from both. This is just as an example to show that opportunities may come your way, but one has to be ready to take them and learn something new. So we come to the conclusion of this, the second part of our discussion today. We go on now to the third part, which is future planning. Until now, we have been listening to those who have made efforts at leading their lives post-retirement based on what they wanted to do. There are those, however, who are ready to enter the golden age. Dakshita, your career has been outstanding. Hello, am I? Okay. Dakshita, your career has been outstanding. Can I ask you to share your thoughts on future planning since you're entering the golden years, and tell us how meaningful and satisfying you are going to make them?
Thank you, Veena Ji. So I am deeply impressed by exactly what all everybody has done. More impressive is the fact that the zeal and the desire to do something is there as a common thread in almost all members of the family. And perhaps I'm standing at a milestone where within a short period of time, I'll be hanging my boots from the government, and I'll have a lot of time. I'll have new routines, new domestic challenges. I'll have a lot of space around me. But there's something I want to tell everybody here, particularly those who are younger than me and those perhaps who are wondering whether opportunities come or don't come. It's less about opportunities, it's more about the mind. You have to keep yourself physically fit. You need to have your financial stability. That goes without saying. But what really matters is this, what's between the 2 years. Somewhere in my early 50s, and Rahul had mentioned in the introduction about how Devi, my husband, is a very keen, avid, and now a fairly renowned photographer. But that's okay. I mean, that was his hobby. But somewhere in my 50s, I started thinking, what am I doing for myself? And for me, the inspiration rests at home. And apart from anyone else, my inspiration was my father, who continued to practice till the pre-COVID. He was practicing gratis. He was practicing maybe one patient. He was actively practicing till he was 85. I saw my mother, who did a diploma in public administration, and at a time when scrap to something creative was not there, she was the person who was driving that agenda. More importantly, I saw my younger sister reinvent herself. She didn't like her job. She didn't want to work in a vertical with a hierarchy. So she totally changed tracks and entered the wellness space. Today, she's a Reiki master and she's a Pilates teacher. So I said, what is it which sets these people apart? They're right home in the family. And I realized it's all to do with the mental discipline and the mind. So I wrote a book, and that book turned out to be quite a big hit. I was pretty surprised. I said, wow, I can write. Then I wrote another book. And today, if I go to Amazon and I read the good reviews, just today, for instance, somebody went to the Gymkhana library, picked up a copy in the morning, and in the evening, while we were doing this discussion, said, wow, Dakshita, that's a fabulous book. And I said, hey, I've got a retirement plan in place. So I kind of think that we have to constantly, when you enter the 50s, you automatically start changing gears. I remember once Ranu Bhaiya telling me, hey, anybody who's in 50 needs to plan 10 years ahead for retirement. But retirement is only a number, and that number is here. What you need is discipline, and you need a passion. And I think more or less that I've got it in place. I've got my writing. I've got my deep interest in public policy. I'm doing webinars, I'm on the lecture circuit. I've written a very seminal piece for the EPW, and I was so thrilled with myself that it got peer reviewed, and all the economists in the group will know how much that means. These are little milestones. But my short point is this, that the inspiration for me rested within my family. And for me also, Devi was a bit of a challenge because his inspiration was already there right from the beginning. Both of us have a commonality that we love nature. And once I've seen Ajay Bhaiya's pictures, I know exactly where we are heading to. But while Devi has his passion, mine will rest more in a different space. I think I'm ready to go. And I think it's all about the fact that for me, I have derived tremendous inspiration from the larger family, and particularly those who came from Balda Road. Thank you so much.
Dakshita, thank you so much. So all the best to your future planning and your results. I'm sure we'll look forward to it. So now, Ranu, I will request you to share your perspective on the problem. And sorry, before that, I would like you to share your experience as traveling Marco Polo, and not really that so much as how you're going to use that experience in your future plans. So please share what your thoughts are in your future plans based on probably traveling.
Thank you, Veera Gigi. Wow, it has been quite a session so far. So 20 years ago, a friend of mine who is very prominent in the world of economics globally told me that China will grow old before it grows rich. And I didn't quite understand the complete thought process behind that statement. But I started going to China in 2005, which is 16 years ago. And what I've witnessed over there, with regard to the topic that we're talking about, is very interesting. Social engineering, which China did in its one-child policy that started nearly 30 years ago, has seen some amazing results, very negative, and some of them also positive. I just like to put this in perspective. Every child has 6 adults to support, which is 2 parents and 4 grandparents. So the safety net for 6 adults is this one child. And this has led to such a lot of social changes and behavior changes that it is absolutely amazing. The result of this has been that these children generally are spoilt brats, so to say, because they are mollycoddled and they are very precious to the 6 adults. And they are now known as little emperors in China, which means that they have to be taken care of very carefully, and they get the best of education, and they get the best of schools. Also, this has led to a lot of people not being born. It is estimated that about 400 million children were 300 to 400 million children were prevented from being born, and especially the girl child. There were fetuses found in dustbins and all of that, because the moment you had a second child, you had to pay a fine, or you could go to jail in some parts of urban areas of China. So this was a very disturbing trend. It is estimated that had this one-child policy not happened, there would have been, by 2050, about 4 billion people in China, rather than what is now expected. By the way, the Chinese population has begun to go down dramatically. And in the end of the century, there will be half the Chinese population that is there today. And there will be old people. The fertility rate in China is just 1.3 per woman. In India, it is 2.3. And basically, in the US, it is 2.2 and will remain so. There is an analysis that is done that for the economy or the country to remain stable and not decrease in its economic size and activity, the fertility rate has to be 2.1%. And so China is already well below that. We will be about 180 or 900 million people, as opposed to China's only 700 people. What this has happened is that the young people are now at the forefront, but they're getting old. They've had all the adventure and amazing things that they have done. One of the impacts of this is that the Chinese have now begun to concentrate on economic activities that are not labor-oriented, which is why it is not that the Chinese economy is going down because they're not making agarbattis or Ganesh murtis for us anymore, but it is because consciously they are moving towards automation and more technology industries than manufacturing. And Chinese entities are now beginning to invest in other third countries for their manufacturing activities, because they have now realized that this was a significant mistake, and they will not be able to maintain the momentum of actually manufacturing. So I'm going to end here, but just to say that this was a helicopter view, the dangers and risks of social engineering and how societies have had to change. And this is a prime example. It's happening in Japan, of course, as well, and it's happening in parts of Europe. But China is a glaring example of how fast this has happened. And I'm so glad that, and the US will remain a vibrant economy for a long, long time, up to the end of the century, primarily because of the 2.2 or 2.1 fertility rate of the women. And despite the long life expectancy that is happening all over the world, this is having a very bad impact in some of the countries of the world. I just wanted to put this out there because this is very important in terms of the subject that we're talking about. Veena Jiji, I'll hand it over to you, and I think this is a lead to Gogi to start her discussion.
Now, Gogi, please give some thoughts and information on what is required of the seniors to prepare for this period and what is being or could be done to help them.
Thank you. And I have to say that listening to all the speakers in this panel, I think those of us in the younger generation would be wondering, if we would be anywhere as vibrant and active in our golden years. So it's with quite a degree of humility that I'm sharing my thoughts here. And at the very outset, I think what I would say is that really, as far as this whole transition is concerned, there's no generic formula or solution. How we can do it, it's a very personal choice people have to make. So we really probably have to start, as Dakshaji was talking, by thinking about what are the activities, vocations, which are triggering our interest and we would like to pursue, and start acquiring knowledge and skills on it, exploring networks, communities which are related to it. And that, of course, as I said, is a very personal area of exploration. But what I'd like to do is just share 2-3 enablers which could help in this exploration and also widen the options which one can choose from. So the first thing, I think, at a very nuts and bolts level, Ranu Mama talked at a helicopter view. I'm coming down to real brass tack stuff. The first thing I think which is going to be absolutely critical is to keep our digital skills updated. It's a no-brainer really, but many times we are kind of have inertia. There is a laziness to get on with it. But I think a lot of us have seen these kind of interfaces that are getting enabled through the digital platforms. FDG and RSD group are examples of how people have got connected, are sharing their experiences. So not only for routine activities, digital skills are going to be critical to how productively we can engage, whether as volunteers, as mentors, advisors, part of activity clubs. And all of these experiences we heard, quite a few of them were based on some form of digital connect. My father, who retired in the 90s, started consulting with the World Bank, and overnight he had to learn how to use a laptop. And being a very motivated and persevering person, he did it by creating and keeping detailed, meticulous notes on how to use various functions of the computer. At that time, MS Word, Excel, file management, emailing was enough. But going forward, some of the skills which should be very useful would be using, of course, video platforms like Zoom, but also doing things like blog writing or photography, digital photography, making videos, using social media platforms. Almost all voluntary and advisory roles would involve a maximum 10 kinds of activities, and pretty much all of them require these kind of skills. So what is it that the young people can do to help? Just a couple of examples. There are interesting platforms which are being created which connect tech-savvy young people with seniors to provide tech support and hand-holding. Teen Years is a young startup company in New Mexico, USA, which has helped 3,000 seniors with these skills. Cyber Seniors is another such example, providing one-to-one phone tech sessions and webinars on how to do things. They have 12,000 resources on how various volunteers can learn and orient themselves to deliver such support. In India, back home here, India Habitat Center, local clubs like our own Vasant Vihar Club often run classes. So I think we need to just reach out and look at how we can start learning these skills on an ongoing basis. The second point, which I think has been referred to by Dakshita Jiji also and Rahul Bhaiya as well, and all the other speakers, is really the importance of lifelong learning. And that really is becoming a central theme. Learning is no longer limited to the first 20 years. In fact, in 2016, Coursera's most popular course was Learning How to Learn. So, it kind of puts in perspective the need to keep this state of mind where we are learning. In a recent study, a group of 80-year-olds were given lessons on multiple skills, learning a language, photography, painting, and how to use iPads. And in just 6 weeks, they observed that the cognitive abilities increased to those seen in 50-year-olds. So in short, 30 years younger by learning 3 new tasks in 6 weeks. So there are a whole range of learning options. Online, of course, YouTube is there, and there are all kinds of online classes happening. And there are more structured courses on thousands of online platforms like Coursera and Udemy, edX. And if we have the Das family's love for accomplishment, I think one could even get a degree from an Ivy League university if one wants to. Or one can learn to become an online tutor or design an online course. And given the number of educators in the family, that's another thought. So these are, of course, some examples of online learning, but people struggle to do everything online. So there are new interesting models and variants which have come up. Road Scholar is a company that takes people to fascinating locations while they're learning about that topic. They take you to destinations. Then there are learning groups where people who have some common areas of interest come together and enroll together into an online class and meet at coffee shops, at common spaces, and stay connected. So it's a socialized learning experience. There's a platform called Class Central, which offers this option. Then there's the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, which is a kind of an institute that is set up across 120 universities in the US and providing all kinds of interesting courses to adult learners. And many universities in the US also allow seniors to do courses without taking exams, etc., but they could be course auditors. And these are really useful ways where people can contribute and also learn. So that's really where I would think we need to be consciously engaging. And in India, of course, a lot more needs to happen. And the third and last bit, which I thought one could really focus on more, is the question of how do you find options to contribute or engage in society? And that depends on one's interest, temperament, circumstances. Somebody like Ajay Mama has done it so beautifully and organically. But if people are wondering where to get going, there are many platforms one could explore, which are going to be giving information on freelancing opportunities or volunteering opportunities. There is this AmeriCorps, which is in the US, and I think we need something like that in India, where even seniors can volunteer for community projects, do foster grandparenting, do a senior companion role for older people. And then I think the part which is really missing but needs to be much more, some businesses are coming up with, is a kind of counseling service or a coaching service for people who are in their senior stage. And there was an example I saw of a retirement counselor in Canada who charges 100 Canadian dollars an hour. So clearly a fairly strong value proposition over there. But there are startups, including entities like retirementjobs.com, Empowered Age, which are providing even professional opportunities, people in the 50-55 plus age group. And LinkedIn has a Pro Finder segment for these kind of opportunities. So I'm just throwing these as a couple of examples on where one can start the discovery process for engaging. And clearly in India, we are still lagging behind because we see ourselves as a young country. But as Mummy's slide was mentioning, there's a huge chunk of people entering that age group, and a lot more needs to be done to support that journey. So I'll end over here and hand it back to Mom.
No. So we've now come to the end of our session. The basic purpose for this session was to point out the need for, bridging the gap between the young and the old. As Gogi has said, and as Divakar's experience showed, and many others, I'm sure, we need to have some sort of support system both ways, between the elders and the younger generation. So I was hoping it would lead to that. However, time is short, but all the same, I'm handing it over to Dakshita now for Q&A, if there are any questions.
Yeah, so briefly on the Q&A side, Suvir has given fulsome praises to all the individual speakers in his inimitable style. Thank you, Suvir. Gopal Bhaiya has also praised. Now the real question has come, the meaty question has come from Gaurav. He says that if there is a perspective on the demographic time bomb healthcare improvement is creating for the planet and the environment. And yes, this is a fact. Anybody would like to take this on? Ranu Bhaiya?
I cannot really answer that question, Gaurav, and the demographic shift impact on the environment. I guess much more impact is going to happen through other initiatives in terms of the demographic shift. I guess there'll be less pressure on the world's resources, and therefore there should be some. But there is a point here. As you get wealthier, as you get richer, you consume more. So I guess will have an impact on the environment. That's all I can contribute on this.
Yeah. And the fact is that because of improved healthcare, actually the fact is that the age profile is increasing. And perhaps, yes, there is inevitably going to be a fallout on that. But apart from that, one thing which I think Gaurav, Suvir have both appreciated is the Ikigai model as to be used for finding one's purpose in life. Suvir, of course, has a very important point that he says that it means that you have to accept things, but this is just a general statement, and I think after this, I and I think a whole lot of other people are going to be reading a little bit more about it. Suvir says too many of us make excuses for doing nothing, and yet we must live only if we do something. And something he says about nestling in the cocoons of sameness, and that's something I can empathize with, because after over 35 years of following a same routine, I'm going to be going out of a cocoon into a new routine. For which I'm inspired by Ajay Bhaiya's transition over just 3 years ago. He could do it, I too shall follow. So I think I don't get any more questions unless
I have something to say on that. A very, very important factor is there is a very strong mind-body relationship. And I feel very strongly, and that data also, when I was reading out on the life expectancy and all that, there's just so much the medical profession can do for improving our health. I think there's a lot depends on, as Dakshita said, on the Ikigai, that is finding a purpose in life. When you have a purpose, automatically, somehow I've noticed even with myself, that health takes care of itself. Yeah. And when you are associating yourself with others' problems, there is a lot that happens to you, God knows mystically, which takes care of you. Ajay, I'm sure you must have noticed that. And
Yes.
so I would strongly recommend those who are moving in that sphere to get connected to the larger societal level and engage in that, so that even like Benu's engagement in Bridge, I mean, she's gained so much in terms of interacting with people and understanding them. So even your personal interest can lead you towards that. But there has to be a purpose. And that's what makes for good quality of life, health-wise also. That is very, very important. So planning about 20 or maybe not 20 years ahead, but about 10 years ahead, look forward to, you must realize that half your, productive life is still ahead. We don't realize that and we stop thinking about it. So it's very, very important for the future generation to plan well ahead and work towards it, so that both in quality of life as well as in terms of health, you have a better future. So that's my advice to that.
So Gaurav has recommended a book. He says a good book to read is The Second Mountain by David Brooks. Thanks, Gaurav. We duly note that. So Ranu Bhaiya, do we have any time or do we close now?
I think let's close.
So one other thing.
Yeah, Ajay, go on. Yeah.
So the last line that I have to say is कि जो भी प्यार से मिला हम उसी के हो लिए मेरा ही प्यार के हमसे कुछ न बोल. यही हो रहा है हमारी जिंदगी में कि कहाँ कोलोराडो, कहाँ वुमेन टॉयलेट, कहाँ क्या. There is no connection to either of the things. Carry on, please.
Right. So I think on that very happy note, I think close the session. But before we do, I have just one announcement to make, which is about the next 3 sessions. I normally do this at the end of every session. So on the 21st of March, Vishu is going to lead a session called Money, Money, Money. Okay, that'll be a very interesting session. On the 4th of April, Chand is going to lead a session on the resurgent private sector, which is becoming all of a sudden a little more respectable than what it used to be. And on the 18th of April, Madhur is going to lead a session on ecosystem restoration.
Wow.
So these are the next three sessions that are going to happen till the end of April. And that's it. So this session.
Great.
Thank you so
very much. Thanks.
And Ajay, Dakshita, Bhai Sahab has left, Benu, and have I forgotten somebody? No, I don't think so. Gogi.
Veena Gigi.
Veena Gigi, certainly. Thank you so much, and bye-bye until a fortnight later, until we meet on Vishu's session. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. No more from me for 1 year.